Hey, GLP-1 plus size community. Before we jump into the podcast, please take the time to leave us a 5-star review on whatever audio platform you're listening to the podcast on. Share your story and how the podcast has helped you. This will help us get referred up in the audio platform so that we can reach more people that need our help, our support, and guidance from our doctors. Help us get loud and change things.
Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.
"20 seconds a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise. That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Ro helps find the medication that's right for you, based on cost, availability, and your weight loss goals. Losing weight with GLP-1s is possible through Ro.
Food noise is really a term coined by the public. This is a social media term. This is not something that traditionally we've used in medicine. And when you look at scientific studies digging into what people are feeling, we don't really use it. But like we all understand what that means. It means you're not constantly thinking about food, right? There is a great study that I wish people would actually dig into a little bit more. It's the Step 5 trial of studying wegovy, and it's the 2-year outcomes. And they did a really interesting thing where they polled people kind of about their affinity for specific foods and cravings. And I would say that that's the best place that we have that the science talks about food noise. And a couple of really interesting things about that study. One is, and there's really good visuals if you want to go, and anyone can, I think they did a great job of explaining it. So a couple of fascinating things. One is that at about 20 weeks, people start to have a recurrence of some level of food noise. Some of their cravings start to come back. And so I feel people panic. Now that's a very different 20 weeks is where we start to see an uptick, but by a year, and then ultimately by 2 years, you really start to see people having cravings for things again. So whether they broke it down, salty, sweet, fried, things like that, things we're totally had aversions to at the beginning start to come back. And they come up back on par with what the people who are receiving placebo say by the end. Now, very big outcome difference, though, is that the people who are still on the medication say that they have a different response than the placebo group when it comes to two things. One is the ability to control what you eat still remains significantly better. And then when you look at the weight outcomes, these patients have lost their 15+% and are maintaining. So even with cravings coming back, they are maintaining their loss. So I answered a question that was a little bit different than what you answered, but I think this is important because it gets buried, because people panic when they start having cravings again.
100%.
I always felt like I was the odd one out. I always said I didn't really get food aversion, more so than food walls. Like I will get a craving for cake, and hey, I'm going to have a piece of cake, but I can stop at that piece though, where it used to be insane. So
I can have 3 bites like an average normal person and be done.
Yes. And that's where we see an effect on the brain. Okay. So what your brain used to need to eat a whole cake to get a dopamine hit. Now
on the day I could do that. Just way back in the day.
yes. I mean, that's in essence, listen, we're joking about whole foods before, but in essence, ultra processed foods have ruined our brain so that we have overridden the walls that say you should stop eating. And ultra processed foods have been chemicals to our brain that have really lowered our thresholds, or rather increased it, so that we need more and more and more to get any kind of satiety, any kind of satisfaction, and to get that dopamine surge. What this medication does is it heals that part of the brain. And we are not just seeing that with food. We are seeing that with alcohol. We are seeing this with drugs. We are seeing this with other addictive behaviors. And we are studying it because something about this drug starts to heal the parts of the brain that go crazy under MRI when we show people pictures of decadent food or their drug of choice or a glass of wine, right? And so this idea that like, I want real food, that's the way our bodies were meant to be.
Yes, that part.
Right?
Yeah.
I've never been like that.
Yeah.
Like my whole life. So it's like awesome. And I think in the beginning, Dr. Sowa, and even like on our first season, I was so blown away by this whole experience that all I could do was talk about it. Like Dave, who has a show similar to mine, like we always tease that we're GLP-1 evangelist, because we were like, the thing that we've been sick with our whole lives all of a sudden turns off, like all of a sudden, like, and we start to lose weight. We start to be able to keep it off. We start to be able to use our brain in different ways. That's another thing, right? Because it's not plagued with all this stuff. And
use it for evil now, Kim.
Sometimes we all know I've got the Grinch, sometimes. But I digress. But seriously, like I can do so many more things. I have like a more capacity, if that makes sense, to do more things, physically and mentally. And that was such a big deal for me. But in the beginning, I was like everybody else, thinking about shot days and weigh-in days and calories and going about it like a weight loss kind of journey, right? That anybody would go after, especially if you're on a weight loss journey every year of your life, So when that starts happening, and then I started to realize this is very different, right? And it has nothing. It really does have nothing to do with weight. It has to do with health.
Right.
It really does, and all the health in the land, right? Like it's not just physical; it's the mental as well, And so over 4 seasons, right? I see this progression of Kat and I going through it and our guests going through it. We get newer people. We kind of bringing people, and sometimes they're only a few months in. I usually wait until they get like halfway through the dose. Before I invite them on the show, I'm like, I just need you to get to 7.5. This is like, once you're there, I know you've had the moment. I know you've had the realizations and you can come on the show. You know what I mean? Because it is a big deal. Like when you start to realize it's not about the pounds on the scale. It's not, and I think that's been like the coolest thing about this, and really what I want everybody to know. And I think that too, all those things you talked about with the food, we talk about genetics too, right? And how that plays a big role in your weight and a big role in the size of what your body's going to be at the end of this or not, And I'm wondering if you can talk with us a little bit about, I know we're just kind of spitballing, but about like this idea around insulin resistance. So we've had people on the podcast, our doctors on the podcast, come on and say, actually, most people with obesity have insulin resistance. If they have had obesity for a long time, you may not see it on the A1C for a while. And even then you may see it fast all of a sudden. And so all this time we could have been doing the same treatment that we would have done for prediabetes or diabetes, right? And possibly never have gotten to that point, Right. So I'm wondering if you can touch a little bit on what this is And in terms of like insulin production and things like that, and because I mean, if you look at insulin levels on anybody that takes these meds, they're high, right? Why is that? And how is that good for someone like us, right? To have more insulin so that we can process it.
So, good. I actually caught you in something that maybe you don't know. This is the first thing that I heard that I'm like, I got to correct that. Okay.
I love it. Fix it.
Okay. So let's start there. So
let's do
insulin resistance is when your body produces insulin through the pancreas, but it produces too much. And your body is not receiving the signal. Well, it doesn't produce too much. It produces like ineffective insulin. And we need insulin to grab blood sugar. And that's how it gets off to our body. And our body over time, especially when we have excess weight and with age and genetics, will start to say like, I don't like that level of insulin that you brought the glucose to me. So I'm going to make the glucose sit around in your blood, and it's going to get higher and higher. And it's going to cause all this inflammatory damage until you go back to your pancreas, increase that insulin, and then I'll receive it. But then we get stuck in this chicken and egg fiasco where the body's continuously telling the pancreas to make more insulin, and the insulin becomes in effect just it's not very effective. And that number will keep going up and up and up. And ultimately, that tug of war will lead to blood sugar levels that will turn into prediabetes, type 2 diabetes. And eventually, if left unchecked or untreated, type 2 diabetes can really burn out the pancreas, and your pancreas can stop producing insulin in the end because it is tired. And that's kind of when people say, oh, it was type 2, and then it kind of went into type 1. And now I'm insulin dependent type 2 diabetes because my body has stopped making insulin. Okay. The thing that you said was that people on these meds have higher levels of insulin. So let's kind of get into that for a second. So yes, the majority of people that I see in my practice have underlying insulin resistance. When it comes to the country as a whole, only 12% of American adults are metabolically healthy. Do they meet all 5 criteria that go into metabolic syndrome and metabolic health? And about 50 to 70% of our population has some level of insulin resistance. So the majority of people that I see do have it. I believe very strongly in testing for fasting insulin, which is not necessarily the standard. And most doctors would look at you like you're nuts if you request it. I believe in using something called a HOMA-IR score, which is an early predicted value of insulin resistance. And you will see elevation there. It takes your insulin and your glucose, puts it together, and it kind of tells you where you are on the spectrum. We at Sowa have a at-home testing kit to test for it because it is often so hard for people to get this done through their doctors. And it's nice to know where you're started in this journey with it. I see often a lot of people saying when they start a GLP-1 medication that it makes your pancreas secrete insulin. And so then in effect, your insulin levels become higher. What it really is doing is very quickly producing more effective insulin that makes it so that you grab your blood sugar. So insulin levels will decrease. So if I test your fasting insulin at the start of a journey, your levels will be high if you have insulin resistance. If I put you on this medication, yes, there might be bouts where your insulin is kind of like higher right after a meal, or is more responsive, more effective, but overall your fasting insulin will be much lower. I have never had a patient who on repeat after being on this medication and losing weight, that fasting insulin is higher. So we heal. That's actually one of these levels of how we heal our metabolism. We are really healing the insulin resistance. And so with that too, you'll start to see your fasting glucose go down. You'll start to see your CGMs, if you're wearing them. It's not just your fasting, it's all throughout the day. And it's your postprandial, your post-meal glucose, and your hemoglobin A1C will follow with that. So I am a big believer in identifying you have insulin resistance because in my opinion, it's a big motivator more than weight of changing the way you eat long-term too. Because if I can tell someone, hey, you've got early insulin resistance here. And if we don't do something about this, you're going to turn into your mom and your grandma who are suffering from the long-term complications of type 2 diabetes. So this medication is great for you, but also let's really understand the quality of food we're bringing in, how to eat the food, switching up the order. Maybe we get you a CGM so you know how you respond to specific foods. It's like, I feel like it's so helpful for people to unlock that, to
CGM is very
understand that.
helpful.
It's so great because then you're like, oh, I like if I eat a complex carb, I definitely have bouts of hypoglycemia, very, 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 very low. And I test it, my blood prick too, right?
Mhm.
But if I eat like a complex carb before bed, then I'm okay.
Yeah.
But I also, it just allowed me to see how my body's processing all this, like, you know, and make different choices. Like it's real data. It's very powerful. I feel like it's such good insight, you know? I really wish everybody could get one. I mean, you need to have a doctor interpret it, right? But but it would be so great, right? If you could have that conversation and look and see what you're doing, you know?
More data, the better. I just feel like that is one sort of dangerous territory, I think, with the way some people are accessing these meds. It can be so hands off from a medical care perspective that we're like skipping over. We're going from like A to Z. And there's like a lot of information that needs to be garnered before we start meds, before the patient's ready to really make effective change. Often when I think I see people, it's not working for me.
Yes.
Like, because the motivation isn't set right, or we could be missing things. I mean, Brian's story was so powerful because there were so many elements that needed to be addressed, and we made sure we didn't like step over just in terms of just thinness, right?
Yes.
And need to be monitored. And
Well,
so
it's important, Brian, right? Like it's very different than if they gave Brian phentermine, right? Or anything like, or Wellbutrin or whatever. Like it's very different. You know, I think like you said, there's just so much more complex. The disease.
But honestly, in that story, I'd say the same. Like you wouldn't like phentermine gets a bad rap, and like you have to go to the doctor and like get an EKG, even though it's really safe on the cardiac function. But even if we were giving you one of those anti-obesity medications, the first generation, like we wouldn't just say like, here's this, and then let's ignore all the other things. We would say, let's monitor you for all the things and help you lose weight.
I've been on everything, and that's exactly how I was treated.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Really?
Let me know how it goes. See you in a few months.
You know,
like it's always been like that.
If anyone's listening and that's your experience, like it's time to treat yourself better, because that is just not right. And I worry about that because these drugs are so amazing. People want access to them and they deserve access to them, but they still deserve good care too.
They deserve good care. That's so important. I know that we have people in our community. They are for sure, God help me, the ones that are taking retatrutide from peptide companies, research grade and stuff like that. I know they are.
La 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 la. I don't even want to hear it because this is so nuts. And no, la la la.
It's so bad. Dr. Sowa, there are so many. And it's because they're desperate. Yeah. It's because that's really what it comes down to. They're desperate, and they don't have the knowledge to understand how bad that could be. But I understand where they're coming from, because I've been desperate like that before. And if I didn't have access to my meds, which I sit in a place of privilege because I am, regardless of how much I pay for Cobra right now, like I still do, right? I would feel crazy and like go after all the things. And it isn't because I'm worried I would get fat again. I would be worried that I would get sick again. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I feel like I would make poor decisions, you know, and that's why like all this issue with access, I think, is such a problem, because when people are desperate and they cannot afford their medicine and they are sick, they will make stupid decisions, you know, or they will make careless decisions or risky decisions or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's really I will also say, I think what you just so eloquently said is one of the reasons that government needs to step in when it comes to insurance coverage and continuation of care.
Yes.
Right? So you are well now. So why would you ever want to be sick again? And we know what happens. Like every scientific paper tells us what happens when we go off of these medications, people. When we gain weight and their cardiometabolic gains, all that improvement go away.
Yeah.
And we also know what happens when you continuously regain weight, lose and regain. it's worse for our cardiometabolic health. It's worse for our person. And we are going to probably have an increased risk of the 16 cancers that are linked to obesity and everything associated with it downstream. So it's such a good way of putting it. And as we petition for coverage and expanded access, it's like, you can't provide, I mean, I have so many like large agencies and federal government. I see patients in 15 states. So I really see it kind of across the board where there is coverage one day and then there's not coverage.
Yeah.
That should be.
We've gone through that. Oh yeah. My husband and I, oh yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And then, like I see people who like have to get a PA every time they have to go open a dose, or the people are like, no, we're only going to pay for maintenance if you're at 15. Well, 15 for me makes me bananas. Like, I mean, it's like, it's not good for me. It's not, like everybody's different, but the PBMs are practicing medicine and not enough people are talking about it. So us as creators, we're trying to talk about it because it's not okay. And like when we went to DC, I thought I was and I'm never, ever encouraged by politicians. I'm just going to say, I was very encouraged at the language of our senators and how they understood that not just that obesity is a disease, but all the things that come from it and how it is a massive drain on our citizens, on our country, on our economy, on our programs, right? It was like they got it. And that was a big deal for me. I never expected to feel like, and they don't get it like, doctors get it, right? But they do understand. They start talking about Alzheimer's and all these different things. And that was a big deal. But I think that what they've identified is, it seems like it's taking forever, but I do think that we need some sort of legislation in place. And I know that a lot of people are like, but if we get the government in, we're never going to be able to get them out. And I'm like, here's the thing. Ultimately, many of us, over half, are suffering and dying. Like at some point we got to get in. And I also think that when we're talking about all of those diseases, like what Ryan was talking about, right? With his liver and all, with the heart, all those things, right? We're not talking years before these people get better. We're talking months. Like there are people that are getting on these medicines, and within 3 to 6 months, we are seeing reversal, if you will, right, of these horrible things that are massive drains on the economy. I mean, it is though. Like if people can't work, like that's a thing, right? And I think that we have to think about that. It's not that like other medicines where we're going to get this long-term outcome in the future. We're seeing it now, right?
Well, I mean, have you guys talked about the fact that we might have reached peak obesity in the United States?
I saw the study. Yeah, like
I'm not talking about on the show.
Okay, so let's kind of end on that. I don't know. I'm not saying we have to end, but I just like that is like the pinnacle is that for 40 years plus since 1980, every year that the CDC has looked at population data, our obesity rate has been going in an upward, steady trajectory. Yeah. And in the last 2 years, when they dug into the population data, not across 100% of all demographics, but we saw a slight decline in the obesity rate for the first time since 1980. And this is just population data. So they're not linking it to GLP-1 medications, but what is the only thing that has changed, right?
It isn't the food.
It's not food.
It's not diet culture. That's the same too.
Exactly. We've gone through all those eras. We are in the GLP-1 era right now, and we are starting to see an acute decline in obesity. And so my hope, and actually make this claim in the book, and I had some colleagues, read my book and they're like, this is amazing. This is great. But like, really? Do you want to go here? And what I said is that my hope is with these medications that in 1 to 2 generations, we get to start to reset the epigenetics of our society. So obesity on some level and a majority level is genetic, but something wild started to happen in 1980 when we started to imprint on our current genetics and change things rapidly. And we're passing that forward to our children through both gestation, the weights we bring to pregnancy, the weights we bring to breastfeeding, and forward and in our households. And if we are able in these next few generations start to reset everything around us, and also have the energy to go and say, we need this crap taken out of our food and stop with the ultra processed, and I've got the energy to cook and I know how to eat now and I'm going to change, right? Because it is some of it. But I really do think that we're starting to see it right now. Like you said, like on some level, on an individual level, you can see improvement really fast. And it also looks like on a society level, we're starting to see things relatively fast improve. So
yeah, I think
very
it's getting there.
exciting.
More and more books and more podcasts and more people. I've had people say before, aren't you upset they have a podcast? I'm like, no, I want us all to get as loud as we possibly can to change things. Of course not. I really do. You know, I think that, and it will take way more than this little podcast trucking along. We need the doctors. We need the creators too. Like I know we talked about, sometimes there's some medical advice that shouldn't be given, but we need it. And there's not enough Dr. Sowas. There's not enough Dr. Alberts. There's not enough weight docs. There's not enough doctors out there that are able, I think, also to educate peers that are not obesity specialists. There are not enough obesity specialists. There are not enough endocrinologists to treat the amount of people that are sick with this disease and know how to understand side effects and all those different things and how to manage them. There's just not. And we see it real time, right? All of the creators. And when we do lives, people come in and they're desperate and they don't want to go back to their doctor because they're vomiting or whatever it is. They don't want to talk to their doctor. Why? Because ultimately their doctor doesn't know now or didn't know before, right? And they think this is the only thing. This is my last hope. This is my only chance. It has to work. Nothing else works. That's what they tell themselves. So then they come to the community and they're asking questions from their peers. So it's important that we all learn, and that I think also from our doctors on the show, right? And that our creators also can learn from the doctors, so that we're giving the right kind of direction. So we say, hey, this is what I do, but this is the question you should go back to your doctor and ask, right? That kind of stuff. And I think that is really important because I don't think the creator economy for this is going anywhere. And it's because the gap is so vast.
I think it's getting bigger.
So we've got to get, I hate to say it, but we need to almost have education for our creators. And I think that's really important. I do.
Oh, they can come to my mini med school.
That would be
that idea.
That's pretty cool. I would do that. I would so do that.
I'd sign up.
Mini med school. I love it. It's just enough so that we can go, this is what I've experienced. This is what I've heard from my doctor from my mini med school. Here's what you should ask your doctor. And that's what I try to do with the podcast. Here's what you should go to ask your doctor to get what it is that you need. You know what I mean? And I think that's just important because that's where we're at as a country, as a world, right? Is there are just not enough specialists that understand this disease enough to help us figure out what we need to figure out so that we can get well. So well, if you will.
Well, it's like G.I. Joe and Hasbro used to tell us every Saturday morning and Monday through Friday. Knowing is half the battle. Half the battle. Real American hero.
He's going to go south. I want to get this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
You're fine.
I'm sorry.
I actually do want to ask this question.
I know you wanted to ask a question
about how crappy the food is.
Yeah.
And I think this might.
As I drink my Gatorade.
I know. So we're going to flip back to insulin resistance, right?
Yeah.
I've always wondered this because, recovering from binge eating disorder and also living in diet culture, I was like, I can use a cheat day, but cheat days were really something special with someone with BED. Wow. But thinking on this, since doing this work, I was wondering to myself if binging can contribute to like making your insulin resistance worse, or could binge eating or binge eating disorder also exacerbate insulin resistance or lead to it?
Yeah.
Was it making
all of
myself
the above?
sick? Okay.
All of the above. Yeah.
So even like cheat days can give, like, let's say somebody in the fitness industry where there's a lot of binging in the fitness industry, they can get themselves insulin resistance. Oh, so we are all susceptible, as you've said before.
Absolutely. I feel like it's something we should talk more about is that there's binge eating disorder really is self-harm on so many levels, right? And these medications help to heal what the brain wants to do, really. And it lifts what that kind of that self-harm mechanism wants you to feel, and you don't feel it anymore and don't have a desire for it. So it's still very important because I will say I often can help heal binge eating disorder, but there's a very important component that needs to go beyond just the medication, and we still need to go back and heal the past traumas that are associated with it. And genuinely, like, honestly, most of my patients at one point or another should, if they don't, they should, and I recommend to go work with a therapist, because at any point in this journey, the past traumas of life really can come back. And often I find that it happens when people are at their thinnest, or at their smallest weight, and they get there and they're like, but wait, I still need to fix some things that are going on wrong in my brain and my relationship. So I think that's important to say. But yes, we do see in binge eating disorder, we do see an increase in rates of insulin resistance that seem to be independent of just carrying excess weight. And it probably is the relationship with food, where we tend to kind of pummel the pancreas for insulin, and it creates this higher blood sugar that sits around, and your body needs to figure out what to do with it. And often with binge eating disorder, a lot of food intake will happen toward the end of the day, and that can often or like nighttime eating too, which can also exacerbate and lead to insulin resistance. And our body really is made to eat in circadian rhythms and during daylight hours. And even if we have nighttime workers, hospital shift workers, we tend to see higher rates of obesity and insulin resistance and prediabetes, independent of like food quality or what they're eating. It's just kind of anti what our body was made to do. It's really, it's important that we become educated on this too, because a lot of people think with binge eating disorder, it's like, why don't you just stop? Right. And again, we're not saying that to people who are suffering from anxiety or depression or other diseases, right? And why don't you just stop? It's more, how can we help, and how can we help you get treatment? And now that treatment paradigm is starting to shift, where GLP-1 medications are starting to be offered as that toolkit, so people don't have to do it alone.
We are offering, just so you know, we are having experts on the show that are like cognitive behavioral therapists. We're having a therapist and everything. We're trying to provide as much as we can, because there's just such a gap, so we can always have some sort of tools.
So I wanted to ask in regards to what you were talking about with oh Lord, the question, I just forgot what I was going to ask you.
That's okay. We have more.
Yeah, go ahead and go on.
All right. I have a hopefully last question, unless Bear gets his back. I feel like you are very educated, and you might be able to speculate a little bit on this, because I'm hearing this from other people in the community around anxiety. So I often talk about my experience with, I have anxiety anyway, but I used to have obsessive anxiety.
Food has definitely been a very dominant voice in my head. That's not the main focus anymore. Dieting, exercising, and adding GLP-1s through Ro is a game changer. I have such a sense of mental freedom since I started with Ro. Food no longer controls my thoughts. Family time used to revolve around food, and now it revolves around what we're gonna go do together.
Where I would worry about things completely out of my control or years in the future, I couldn't stop. I would actually, especially at night, download my day like in my head, and I would need to download with my husband like external process to be able to get it out so that I could sleep. And I remember kind of through my life going back to this like rhythm of wanting to overeat at night. And I remember, this is going to sound crazy, but like I've heard some of the doctors say, your body will do things to your brain to make you want to eat more and do all the things and get off track and all the stuff, because it wants you to regain weight, right? And it processes things and sends you different things. Is there a chance like that food noise and that this sort of obsessive anxiety thing, is that a chance that that's the obesity? Because mine turned off. like I've had it forever, and it just turned off. Like I started to get metabolically healthy, and then I didn't feel like I needed, like John and I went like a year and a half where I didn't download my day with him. And it wasn't just downloading, like I would actually obsess about like my meetings, what I said, how my jokes landed, and how I would do it differently. Why? The day was over. It was complete insanity. But I don't do that anymore. And I kept wondering, was my body trying to make me anxious so that I would eat?
That's fascinating. Do I think I don't think your body was making you anxious, but I think that you were treating the anxiety, like the food was a drug, and that, sometimes like when people drink alcohol, the next day their anxiety is high because it's a drug. Alcohol is a drug, and food can be a drug too. And then to self-medicate your anxiety, you drink again, but then the cycle continues.
Yes.
And so that's probably more of what was happening, was that you'd get these like peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
And it felt like your body was your body was telling you, like, I like that high blood sugar, and now I'm operating at too low of a blood sugar, and can you give it to me again? And can you give me that dopamine hit? Because now I've had a really stressful day and I'd like it. And that sort of hormonal balance was your body trying to sabotage you to gain weight? Probably not, but we know that hunger hormones surge, especially if you haven't fueled yourself properly during the day, or if you've lost a lot of weight. That there is a kind of a rebounding there.
Or even if I'm tired, if I don't get enough sleep, I'm like snackerous.
I mean, I do this all day, every day. And now I have a 7-month-old baby who does not like to sleep between the hours of 2 and 4. And I cannot wait to eat in the morning. I'm so hungry.
Right.
I'm so hungry. And I'm just so ready for a good night's sleep. Because
I get that.
My body knows that it's under kind of attack, and it needs we're animals, right? We're animals, and you are stressed and you need fuel because you might be attacked again right around
There's a saber-toothed tiger somewhere out there after us.
There is.
Totally.
That's the kind of crap I used to worry about.
Worry about the saber-toothed tiger.
Could I sneak in one small question?
Yeah.
No.
One small question. Okay, I'm going to do it anyway, Ken. So Dr. Sowa, one of the things I frequently hear from people who are interacting with folks in the GLP-1 community is this sort of immediate knee-jerk reaction of, but you're going to need to be on these medications for the rest of your life, or it's all going to go away and you're going to go back to being ill and obese. And I keep hearing you use the terminology, and I really appreciate it, heal, which I think is important, because I'm always hearing medical professionals talk about this as management, or as just a tool, but not really talking about healing. Now, I don't have any problem with the idea of being on this medication for maintenance purposes, because I always use the analogy of asthma medication. You're not going to tell somebody, go off your asthma medication because you magically no longer have asthma because you've been taking it. So for any chronic condition, you may need to continue treatment in perpetuity, even for some people. But what's your perspective on healing when it comes to this, in terms of what are in your mind, when you're dealing with patients, what's the level of healing that is realistic for folks in terms of long-term treatment of obesity?
Snaps for a great question.
I know. That's such a nuanced question.
That's a good way to end, right? That's a good one.
Oh, I've got 2 more after this, so.
Okay.
He's gotta go.
She has a bid.
Okay, fine. One more.
Whatever.
Just one.
You're keeping me from putting all of the kids to bed. It's fine. I'm happy to stay here. So that's such a good question. And I do believe in using that word, because this medication is not a mask. We do get to the root cause, and taking off weight from our bodies, decreasing our obesity mass, is healing. Fat is a very, very powerful endocrine hormone, and it kind of has this starting effect that it can go down the path and prevent a lot of disease and reverse a lot of disease. And in the same way that I would say, I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but I think management of anxiety and depression, if we can use a medication that will allow us to put into remission our depression, you actually can heal the brain and prevent future damage. And we can see that future damage, if gone untreated, on functional MRIs. And I like to think of it in the same way when it comes to obesity management. We can heal things so that we are no longer creating damage, but that doesn't mean you won't need the medication. I have a very hard time. I have a very hard time with this argument. Well, you'll need the medication for life. So what? And I'll tell you, my patients know how I feel about this. And this is not to say that all of my patients stay on this medication indefinitely. We can talk about that. But people will come back. I just saw a couple people today and they're like, I've been at my maintenance and I'm at my thinnest weight since, college. Are you going to take me off this? And I'm like, no, we already talked about this. We talked about this 3 months ago when I saw you. No, if there's a point or something changes and we need to talk about coming off, we will. But no, you achieved this with the help of this medication that has helped to heal what became so dysregulated in your body. Right. So I think I like to use that word because I do think it's actually quite holistic. And this medication allows us to take into all of these other things that, as you guys talked about, you just didn't have rooms in your brains or your lives to do. You didn't have the space to think about how to feed yourself in the right way. You didn't have time to think about the gym because you were living in a body that trapped you, and your brain trapped you. It's really even more than body, it's a brain. And now we're able to do all of these things. So that's how I talk about it with my patients. And to the point of, does everyone need to stay on this? The majority of people do. And I think it's the longer you've gone on with a body that has had a level of metabolic dysfunction, the longer you've carried this weight, the more likely you are going to be that this is going to be required for long-term management. And for patients who are my younger patients or had an insult or kind of like a thing that happened or a treatment, like they did IVF and they gained a lot of weight, or they had a cancer treatment, or there was an injury that laid them up and they went from being this college athlete to doing nothing. And those are my patients who, when they are able to kind of regain their muscle mass and really focus on that element, they're able to wean off. But they might need to come back to me in 6 months and a year. And I only release them from my practice from the medication if they promise to not bury their head in the sand and blame themselves if they start to gain, 5 pounds, because come back and let's talk about it. And 5 pounds could be fine, but let's set a threshold so that I can help you with that conversation and decision.
Makes sense. I like that.
Right,
And then
John,
just
you have your last question, Bear.
yes, because it's one that I've sat on for a long time, and I've always wanted to ask a doctor. Because you mentioned, people, working overnights, nurses, you got firefighters, all these individuals that have these jobs where you're not on a traditional schedule anymore. Do our bodies, because this is a myth I always heard as a child, I always heard that if you ate late at night, you would automatically put on weight because you weren't doing anything at night. But I've never really bought that. And I wanted to ask you if there's any science or anything that indicates that when we are on those overnight shifts or those swing shifts, or maybe we do an 11 to 7 and we're not eating until 10 o'clock, are we actually hurting ourselves or setting ourselves up for failure by having a meal when our body traditionally thinks it should be asleep?
Yeah, it appears so. So, I mean, I think back to all of my nights that I spent in the hospital, and people who work the night shift, they are busy, right? Like they are like, there's no decrease. It's not that myth where you started. It was like, I learned that if you ate late, you would gain weight because you're not doing anything. Well, let me tell you, people who work the night shift are working the night shift, and they are doing a lot, but we do still see, independent of calories in, there is a tendency to gain weight and lead to metabolic dysfunction too. So there are things to do. I mean, I take care of a lot of people who work at night, and what we tend to do is you tend to eat your meals. And this is like really one of the times where I don't really believe in long fasting windows. I think it works against us, but this is one of the times when it comes to night shifts where we'll kind of like eat at the start and then don't snack. And because night shift, we'll do a lot of snacking to like stay awake, kind of be, it's like there's less interaction at night. So it's like a nice break. And instead I'll just have people like, take their Stanley and their electrolytes, and that's what you'll sip on. And if you need some broth in between, and then to let yourself go to sleep and then wake up and eat again. And you kind of have to establish that rhythm. And I just thinking being aware of it. And traditionally, most people don't work the night shifts their whole lives. It does come in periods of time, so it can be quite manageable. And then, I'll have patients who are like, they're like, I put myself on the list to get off the night shift as a nurse, and I'm waiting for that day. And, they're like excited about it because they know that their body will probably like it a little bit better.
Good.
I think that's fair. I've had friends that have done night shift and couldn't get pregnant, and then they got on day shift and they were able to.
Yeah, it's stressful, right? We just we are animals. We are not nocturnal. We are supposed to be awake during the day and sleep at night. And so when you start to force yourself against what kind of we've been programmed to do, it's tough.
Yeah, that makes me think of my first professional life was radio, music, clubs, and so many DJs, and albeit maybe it's remove the alcohol, remove the other things, but the late nights, because you're DJing, the DJs that we knew, they're up until 4 a.m. That's their schedule. If you think about like all these like famous DJs, they always had they have passed away from heart issues, strokes, very, very young. And I always attributed to they're out until 4, 5, 6, 7 a.m, 5 nights a week. And a lot of them did start to eat healthier, but it was just that lifestyle. We just lost Batman Scoop a couple of months ago.
It is weird when we try to hear the problem with food with food, right? Like it's, when the body's already diseased. I think it's like you can only do that for so long. For me, that's
that nightclub life.
Well, I never could lose more than like 30 pounds on my own before I was regaining.
Yeah.
I don't think most of us think about the fact that, because like I traditionally worked, either overnights or second shift. So eating at abnormal hours was a normal thing for me. And I don't think most of us think about that having a negative effect on our bodies, but like realistically,
like I'll eat when I eat.
Yeah, but realistically, speaking, you do hear those myths like the one that I heard as a kid. And at some point in time, you have to, like for me at least, I look at what I see as a normal. I don't know many people who have worked overnights that are not bigger humans. So there has to be a commonality behind it with us. It can't just be that every single one of us likes to snack, even though every single one of us does snack, but still there's
like when you're coming home, like say, you come home from like say, I always think of the club, 4 a.m, you have a snack and go to bed. Yeah. So you're making us think, Dr. Sowa.
It's also important, I think, to consider, guys, though, that you can take two people that are on a night shift and they can eat the same thing, be on the same thing, and one will have obesity and one will not. Like that's why Dr. Sowa said that things are so complex, right?
But that's why I asked.
So many different things come into it. So it's not just you have a night shift, you eat a lot, you're going to have obesity.
No, and it's not. And there is something a little bit more complex to it. We also know that people who carry childhood trauma. Like things live in your body. The stress can be very silent. We see higher rates of obesity that are independent of food intake, right? Same thing with night shift workers. Like our bodies, they hold stress and it manifests in different ways. And for some that is a body that becomes dysregulated and puts on fat in a way that doesn't kind of make sense with what the body's taking in, right? And so there are many different states like this. We'll often even see it like in a menopausal state. I mean, this is what physicians will fight about, right? Which is like, no, they published a study and nothing changes and your metabolism doesn't change. But really, it's like the most stressful period on your body. You're not sleeping well. You don't feel well. Your hormones are going crazy. And what does your body do? It starts to like pat itself, and people gain a lot of weight. And it really comes down to, on a very simple level, is that these are periods of stress and your body is carrying it and reacting in a way. And the more you know about it and can protect yourself. And again, I'm really a big fan, like we're kind of going back to what everyone has been saying, but it's just the more you know, the better informed you are, the more prepared you can be, and you can be aware of it rather than like having to chase it. You can kind of get ahead of it.
Okay.
I love it.
So it's not to say that you work
out.
night shift and there's like, no, there's nothing to do. It's just kind of like, hey, pay extra attention, keep stepping on the scale. And when it becomes a problem, like, you know, start really evaluating when you're eating your food and make sure you aren't snacking, and make sure that you do make time and carve time out to get to yourself to the gym, so that some of your baseline habits going into that new job haven't been shifted. And then if it's really kind of sneaking up behind you, go see a doctor like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but think people who work night shifts, I think one of the considerations that's easy to miss is even like food quality in terms of what's available for people. You know, it's like the options that are available for people during the day, cooking for themselves is less likely at night. You're not trying to wake up other people in the household, or if you live in an apartment community, you're not going to be banging dishes and cooking and making home cooked meals. You're driving around looking for food. You've got a couple of choices and they're all awful for you. And they involve gas stations or fast food places. So I think that, you know, food quality must also play a role in that dynamic of, you know, folks who work overnights and work late shifts.
Like
their food choices are more limited and the quality is questionable.
You know, the News Nation and the we talk about all the time recently, where Jillian Michaels was on, and then there were some obesity doctors that were on too. And they were like, it's the food and it's calories in, it's calories out, and then and all of that and all that. But it's interesting because the interviewer, whose name I always forget,
Dan Abrams.
Thanks. Was literally like, hey, isn't it possible, because they were all acting ridiculous, that maybe the food is trash and people are sick and need medicine? And nobody said a word. And I'm like, that's what it is, guys.
Yes.
It is those things. It's both.
Two truths can exist, and they both exist. And I'm this is my new, I'm on this soapbox because I am seeing a push that for some reason food quality means that we need to defund the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, which would transform our access to these medications. And that for some reason, Ozempic is the reason that we have ultra processed crap food.
Yeah. No.
Like, I don't. Let's like examine that statement. So that's funny that you call that out, because everyone in my personal life will not hear me shut up about this. So my husband's like, I get it.
It's both.
So the answer is not Whole Foods or what it used to be called Wellspring, or was it Sprouts? It's everything, right?
It is everything, and it is top down, and the government should get involved. And it's ridiculous what's happened.
It's bad enough. It's literally killing everyone. Like, I mean, that's how bad it is. Like, whether it's slow or fast, you know what I'm saying? And and these, like you were saying,
this is
I like how we saw on Instagram. You sent me the thing where the Prime Minister, I think it was over in the UK, talked about how they're looking at funding Ozempic and Wegovy in the UK for preventative measures because of the amount of money that the disease of obesity
is costing,
which leads to everything, so many other things, is causing the the National Health Service. It's like we know all this stuff is contributing to obesity. We know it. We've known it for a while now.
We're not guessing anymore.
So
why are we making decisions here?
Let's prevent it, and let's start to fix stuff.
Time to fix things.
You know, let's
That's what this episode will be called: Healing and Time to Fix Shit.
No, I labeled it doing so well.
Oh, so well.
You're doing so well on a GLP-1.
Doing so well on a
That
GLP-1.
is the title. I love it, Kat. I love it.
For the So Well Foundation.
And then we'll put the link to all the things, especially we need to make sure we have something from when your book goes live, because I know our audience.
I'm really excited for it.
Me
because
too.
There's just there are people who are searching, and we need all of the things. But how nice you could have a tool. I mean, I still love books, and I love underlining and printing out the downloadables that we have. You know, like it's going to be such a value add, and so I'm really excited for it too.
I'm excited for you. Well,
that's very awesome.
It'll be like an after Christmas gift. January will come.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
Put it on TikTok Shop, Dr. Soul, and sell
I want
signed
TikTok Shop. I'll sell
copies
the
of
shit
it.
out of that.
I mean, please, you got to teach it to me, because like I was complaining at the beginning, I'm like in Ban Island over on TikTok for talking about these medications, and I can't get off. So
I get it.
I have 4 other accounts
happen
to talk about it. I can't.
So to that
And
point,
people all think I'm a
everyone should go over to
sellout.
Instagram and see me now, Alexandra Sowa,
Yep.
because I can still talk about these meds there.
I talk about on Instagram too. I have way more traction on Instagram these days than I do on TikTok.
I buy so many books because the author signs them.
Okay. Well, I'll send you some. I'll send you.
Aw.
We'll do a little giveaway.
It's just cool, a book signed by the author, whether it's messaged to you or not. It's a neat little thing. I'm a nerd.
Dear Bear.
Sorry, I'm gonna take us off on tangents. Talk about books.
Love it. Okay. All right. Good show.
Good show.
talk.
Good show,
Thank you,
Governor.
We talked a long time. Thanks, guys. This has been great. We'll make it a part 1 and 2. I'll send your people all the things, Dr. Sowa, and then
thank
if
you.
they can send me anything that we
that'd
be great.
I really would. I don't know what you need to tell me about TikTok Shop. We don't even have our products, which are like in retail now. We don't even have them over on TikTok Shop. So I'll send you some of that stuff just to have it.
Yeah.
And the book, when it comes out, I'll send you guys a galley copy and
that'd be great.
Like link to it. I don't know.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Love
it.
Okay.
All right,
Love
cool. Well, it's been a lovely conversation. Thank you so much.
And Brian, congratulations. I mean, your numbers are like, I don't know if you saw, like, I was like, whoa, what is
That's
crazy.
so
So keep going.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I love it.
Nice to see you
All right.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
I'll
Bye.
exit you guys stage left so we can all talk behind your back. Have a great night. Bye.
Great night. Have a
Bye.
great night.
Good show.
Good show.
Good show.
That was very interesting. I always learn something, and then a light always
Oh,
dies on me.
She did. She teaches me something. That's what I love about when the doctors come on the show. It's not all new stuff because they all do. First of all, it's still a very fascinating field, right? And they're all learning stuff all the time because there's new studies. So we learn new things, And I think that's awesome. I love it.
I do too.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I love little Dixie in her appearances sometimes when her little butt shows through.
I
her
feel
little
very
tail.
strongly that Dixie should be the new co-host of the Plus Size
I think
Podcast.
she should.
Goodbye, Bear. You've been replaced with Dixie.
Dixie would like it.
She's looking at me like, did you say my name? Come over and say hey. Yeah, she'll just like go to the door and hang out, and you'll see her over there. It's so
I saw her little tail.
Yeah.
Swish, 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 swish.
She sleeps in between our head at night.
Staring at me. She's like, "What are you talking about me for?"
Wow.
Yeah, we're a sucker.
Be all up your butts, huh?
She owns us. Mm-hmm.
This is her house.
She runs the whole house.
She does.
This is her house.
Yeah, we provide the luxury level that she's used to.
Like literally, that's our pack. Is like Dixie is the head of the pack.
Yeah.
And everybody just listens to Dixie. Like it's crazy.
It's
everybody's bigger than her.
Yeah. She runs it. It is her house.
Queen Bee, huh?
Yep. Whose house? Dixie's house.
Whose
Not
house?
Run's house.
Yeah.
Dixie's house.
Whose house?
We just knew Dr. Sowa was young kids, and I was like, we can keep her too late,
Yeah.
So I know we would ask her all the questions in the land, but she'll come back. She's great.
I had more questions.
I'm sorry. It is what
No, you're not. Don't lie
But
to me.
stuff just made so much sense, especially like late nights that made me really think. I had that moment, like, gosh, we lose a lot of.
I do think it's interesting that she was like, I don't know, I kind of get the sabotage thing, but she was like, I don't know if it's necessarily your body creating the anxiety, but I get the sabotage.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination. Having been married to you for 20 years, babe, I think it's a combination of things.
I think all
you know.
Say to yourself, go to bed.
That's what Kat says. And whenever I do sort of get like snacky, I'll actually think about you going, bitch, go to bed.
I made a little poem or like something out of bitch, go to bed. I need to figure out how to. I wonder if I should rap it.
You 100%
yeah.
And we will put it on the podcast.
Bitch, go to bed.
Snackies that night. Bitch, go to bed.
You snappy, but you want a little snacky. Bitch, go to bed.
But she'll tell me that like all the time, and it should be
I did not go to bed last night, and I
remember I couldn't either. That's why
we didn't sleep for crap last night.
I had chips before I went to bed.
I even took something to try to help me sleep, and I was wide awake. And then I woke up this morning, and then when we got that we're in the finals for that award, it'd be great if we get it. It'd be huge for us. So, does anybody have any non-scale victories this week? I'm just glad I didn't gain any more weight. That's my NSV.
No, our NSV is taking our son to the fair, and he was the one that wanted to leave.
That's true.
Not
We
us.
Oh, you wore him out.
Well, no, we just tolerate. We just kept going.
Yep. That's our non-scale victory, babe. We went to the county fair and the kid wanted to leave. Neither one of us needed to leave. Your feet didn't hurt. My feet didn't hurt.
My feet
The
hurt.
boy wanted to leave.
It just didn't hurt bad enough to leave, you know?
See, my feet didn't hurt.
Is it because I wore TikTok shop shoes? Probably. But I think for Christmas, I would like a nice new pair of shoes. However, all right, now we're going to do the ask because we're talking about money. So, okay, Dave says do this. John says do this. Everybody says
I'm not,
you know what,
Kim, I'll do it for you. I'm not ashamed.
All right, do it.
We need subscribers.
We need paid
likes,
subscribers. Please,
shares. We need all of them. We need members.
But we are doing additional content. I've launched my Moments with Mom. Bear and I are probably going to do some moments, just quick little things that we do that's extra content to give you additional value because we want that for you. But
I'll do extra butt stuff.
Honestly, at this point, my family's all in and I don't have a job.
I'm excited about your whole family being all in on this. This is amazing.
Yeah,
folks.
We're walking the path, and
it takes a lot of work to produce this for you guys, from the scheduling to me editing, and when I do the extra stuff that comes out of anything else, that me or Kim could be doing with our son. And just to let you guys know more stuff about the bills. And hearings in regards to medication is going to be coming everybody's way, just so we all know what's being talked about by our government and how it affects us.
Yes.
Because we need to understand what's going on. So
John and I and Kat, we're going to try and go be more present at these places. Like, we are advocates. This is our life.
Yeah.
So if you could help us to subscribe on audio is $5. It's $5 a month. That helps my family, right? That literally supports our mission and what we're doing together. So if you would consider that,
just buy us a coffee. Just buy us a coffee once a month. So
that's all. It's a cup of coffee.
It doesn't cover a sandwich anymore at McDonald's. So we're gonna get on a tangent though. So
we are gonna get on a tangent. Everybody, it's been wonderful. We love you. Hasta la pasta.
That's right.
You're not alone.
It's not your fault.
Not your fault.
All right. Sorry for the weird money grab at the end, but it's Christmas, okay? Love you. Bye.
Bye.
And reel it in. Ready?
20 seconds a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise. That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Ro helps find the medication that's right for you, based on cost, availability, and your weight loss goals. Losing weight with GLP-1s is possible through Ro.
Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.